everyone. How's your energy? How you doing? All right. We've got a fantastic conversation. And then...
By the way, we did speak about coordination before we came in. So it's an advertising meeting, so we decided to color coordinate.
Power color here. Yes, it is. So for those of you who don't know Antonio Lucio, and you should, he is a legendary marketer. He has worked at some of the largest global brands, Meta, Visa, Pepsi, HP, and he has been an incredibly dynamic force in the industry. He's now currently the principal and founder of 5S Diversity, and we're going to talk more about that as well. But I think the most important conversation we can have is what is on the minds of CMOs today. There is a lot of pressure with technology and AI and business results and margins, and there's no shortage of challenges, but also opportunities for CMOs.
Yeah, so I have news for you guys. CMOs are people too. I know it's hard to believe, but they're people too. And if we were to use a theme song for the CMO today, would be Billy Joel's Pressure. They are under a lot of pressure that I don't remember this level of intensity since I started my career in the middle of a recession back in the 80s. I have 18 companies that are participating in my leadership program across 14 different categories, and I have direct contact with the 2 levels literally below the CMO, where you actually are able to feel the pressure. Overall, everyone is like you guys, very tired, right? Because we went through pandemic, and after the pandemic, by this time, everything was supposed to be great, and it hasn't been. Big macroeconomic challenges that are affecting the bottom line of all the clients, and that is the focus. Every time the CEO is looking at the CMO is about how are we going to drive both the top line and the bottom line. So that's a source of pressure. Second source of pressure is that because everything is about performance, the 3 topics that as an industry we all felt so proud talking about, purpose, sustainability, and D&I, are under pressure too. From board of directors, from activist investors, and sometimes even from the employees. Which is almost like, are you guys really building the business, or you're creating some sort of social movement, as we like to call it, which is great as long as you're delivering top and bottom line. So now you have some of the big companies actually backpedaling on some of those initiatives. And then there is the question that boards and CEOs are asking the CMO about what's going to be the impact of generative AI in our ability to connect with consumers on a one-on-one basis. And they're kind of going like, I have to deliver the short term, I have to do it more effectively, and by the way, I need to have this conversation about how we're going to transform the practice and the ecosystem. So it's kind of tough. And then to make matters worse, or to add more logs to the fire, then you have those provocateurs, like Scott Galloway saying that the CMOs are dead, that they're like the second lieutenant in the Vietnam War, they're going to be dead in 18 months. And it was very interesting what he talked about, because he narrowed the role of the CMO just to brand, advertising, and media. And if you give me 2 minutes, there is a fundamental difference between the role of the CMO in CPG and outside of CPG. The thing is, when I started in my career, everything was CPG. Most of the people in the marketing ecosystem grew up there. Now there is significantly more people growing up outside of the CPG world. The CPG world, 4Ps or 4Es, whatever you want to call it, outside of the CPG world, depending on where you are and the strength of the CMO, you're going to have more Ps or more Es or less than those. It is there where the pressure is the most intense. And the recommendations that we always give, particularly at the people that are working on that side, is you have to earn the seat at the business table. If you don't earn the seat at the business table, you have no permission to talk about brand, advertising, or media. You have to be bilingual and bicultural in terms of you have to be completely fluent in the language of the CEO and the CFO. Numbers first, pretty pictures last. And at the same time, be able to translate the business talk into ways of motivating the ecosystem so that you can deliver the products, services, and experiences that you need to deliver. And then the last part, which is the one that the industry feels less comfortable with, you have to be able to show your worth always. And that means short-term, mid-term, and long-term, and be able to actually show the CFO that all this wonderful stuff that we do with planners is really translated into tangible business results. If you're not able to do that as a CMO, people will roll their eyes every time you talk poetically about brands.
And that's why we're seeing so many CMO roles being eliminated, unfortunately. It's not demonstrating the value in those organizations.
Yes, see, when you're in CPG, the question is whether Antonio is a good CMO or not. If Antonio is not a good CMO, they'll put Marla in, but the chair is there. The chair is there, will forever be there. The P&Ls are built around either brands or categories. And for the most part, most of the CEOs are going to come from marketing or sales, or what they call, or what we used to call commercial. So Chris Kempczinski from McDonald's, he introduced Aquafina at Pepsi. He is the CMO of McDonald's. Ramon La Huerta from PepsiCo, the same sort of things. Outside of the CPG world, if you switch the CMO, the chair is not guaranteed. Look at Verizon. Diego Scotti, very strong CMO with all sorts of power across business units and central teams. He leaves the chair. The new role is going to be completely decentralized and responsible just for corporate brand. Or you're layered under one or two levels below. So the whole notion of everything that I spoke about outside of the CPG world is really, 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 really very important, or the practice will diminish over time.
So given these changing dynamics and for the agencies, and we have a room full of strategists here that are working with these brands and with these CMOs, what can they do to help be a better partner and support them?
You got to be a business first partner to the CMO. You have to understand profoundly what's on her mind. What are the biggest business issues that she has to solve? And by the way, you guys are strategists. This should be like music to your ears. The complexity of the business problem is what drives most of you, at least the ones that I worked with and were really, really good at their craft. Be more of a business partner to the CMO. Be a bit more empathetic as to how they can have impact within the organization and be able to actively participate with them in the Show Your Worth initiative, whether it is short-term, mid-term, and long-term. The other thing in which you can help a lot is that the role of the CMO is not just because it's total business, it's not just about the consumer alone. There are the employees. There are the clients when they're sometimes, most of the times outside of CPG, client and consumer are two separate things. There is the investors community that sometimes when they become activists, you have to deal with. There is government official, particularly if you're working on tech, and then you have the opinion leaders like Galloway that have to be managed as well. I believe, and we've had this conversation many, many, many times, that as much segmentation and science and depth that we have for the ultimate consumer, we're not doing the same thing for the internal customers that the marketing organization has to deal with. And sometimes if you're not able to align the different departments within the organization, especially in the non-CPG world, you're not going to get anything done. You guys can help a lot in that effort because of the skill set that you bring.
I think that's very helpful advice. What do you believe marketers and agencies should be doing as it relates to AI, both automated as well as generative?
Listen, I started in this business at a time where you would go to the agency and typesetting was done manually. And everybody was scared, oh my God, the digital world is coming. So many jobs are going to be eliminated. And yes, there were some jobs eliminated, but the explosion of new jobs that nobody actually could even imagine, the proliferation of channels and opportunities, the creation of things like Google and Meta and the company formerly known as Twitter. And I mean, it was just unbelievable. And I think that we are in the same sort of space. We're very afraid of the stuff that is going to go away. I don't think we're tapping into the potential of the things that are going to be. The one thing that I know for sure is that in a world where competence is going to be a given, okay, give me something for this brand, for this target and all that, and any company and any small business will have access to kind of something good, the premium is going to be for truly outstanding. Cream always need to come to the top. You guys are, I don't think you guys are going to be out of a job anytime soon. The way in which you produce will probably need to be reinvented. The way in which you guys developed ideas may need to be invented, but the premium on creativity will be more than it is today, because when scale does not matter anymore. I mean, you come from a big agency, you have bigger resources. When that does not matter, you have to be really, really, really good at what you do. So I'm not. Yes, having gone through the Meta experience, I am not worried about the marketing components or the creative components. I am more worried about the social implications. We already saw with social media the price that we can pay as a society, and now we're going into something that is social media in steroids, and I don't think that we're spending enough time thinking about truth and thinking about information, misinformation, deep fakes, everything that we've talked. To me, those are the big issues in terms of what I tell my daughters, and you have to embrace this, as opposed to we have to embrace that, figure it out. You're going to help your clients in the way because they need to figure it out too. I don't think that the creative industry is going to disappear at all. I think there's more and more opportunities than ever before.
Well, I'm very glad to hear that you're bullish on creativity, because this is a room full of creative people, and the theme has been strategic bravery, and the conversation that's really threaded throughout the day has been how to get people to really embrace taking risks. And that is one of the challenges that this group deals with on a regular basis, is getting marketers and brands to take that risk and leaning into creativity. What guidance would you give this group?
If I may be a bit provocative.
Always, that's what we want.
Our industry, I'm guilty as charged. So this is not that you guys, no. So sometimes we go for creativity for the sake of creativity, or creativity for the sake of awards. And one of the things that I can tell you unequivocally is that those days are over. and by the way, it's kind of interesting that we've forgotten that even Mr. David Ogilvy used to say, if it doesn't sell, it's not advertising.
Right.
And somehow we just like to do other stuff, both clients and agencies. Those days are over. And what I hope is that what I've been seeing at Cannes over the last couple of years, which is the agencies are at the Palais still counting the number of lions, and all the clients are with the consulting firms talking about generative AI, talking among themselves as to how they're going to, what are the capabilities of the marketing team, how are they of the future, what type of partners are they going to need to actually sort data, generative AI issues and all that. And the holdings are sometimes part of those conversations, the agencies are not. That has to dramatically change. Otherwise, we may go the opposite way of creativity. I think we need to go back to creativity as a way to actually deliver the business goals, more impactful and more uniqueness, relevancy, and memorability are things that, to me, that's how I learned the craft, but within the context of business results. That, to me, is the one thing that we all need to work very closely together to ensure that the role of advertising is to sell.
That's very helpful. I just want to ask you one more question before we open it up for Q&A. What do you do to stay relevant and on top of everything, given just sheer proliferation of content and information and staying on top of everything?
Well, at the most personal level, I am blessed to have 5 daughters that keep me on my toes. And boy, do they keep me on my toes. The privilege that I have now of spending so much time with the 1 or 2 levels below the CMOs is, it is really reverse mentoring opportunities. I can tell you that they're probably getting some things from me, but I'm getting a lot from them too. So the stuff that I'm telling you today is not what I used to do as a CMO. It's what's happening today. And by the way, I have CPG like McDonald's and Anheuser-Busch, and I have tech companies like Meta and Snap, fintech. So I have a pretty good feel for what it is that keeps me relevant. I happen to like reading current events a lot more than business books. I don't like business books very much.
Current events are very helpful to stay on top of. Thank you. This has been great. I'm going to turn it over to Andy to let the audience ask you some questions now.
Right in the middle.
Sorry, just shout.
Shout.
So I come from the data and research perspective, and
Do you mind introducing yourself? Because you know me, I would love to know you.
the strategy and creative issue that I see is an ad agency will come to us with something that they really want to accomplish. It's exciting. And the CCO's office from the same brand will come to us with a different idea. And the CHRO will come to us with an idea around internal communications and brand ambassadorship. And I'm talking to 3 different people in the same brand, and they're all doing something different and not communicating with each other. So how would you address something like that?
That's one of the big issues that most companies on the client side are having, which is everybody understands that you need to deal with multi-stakeholders, but each one, let's assume 5 for the sake of an argument. The employees is HR, consumer is marketing, customers is sales, public policy takes care of government officials, and then opinion leaders is the comms department. The company needs to organize the process, otherwise you run the risk of brand cacophony. Sometimes the agency can be very helpful at pointing those things to the client. The problem is that sometimes you have 5 clients within a client with 5 agencies within the client, and it becomes the most you can do is to point it out as an issue and how it impacts, how it can impact the business, and importantly, because this actually makes people to listen, is the cost and time impact that not doing it in a more aligned way will represent to the client. Is that helpful?
I'll throw in one. Who's doing it well today? Who do you admire?
I mean, brands that are doing it well today that I admire. I think Google is doing a phenomenal job. Has become it has a great blend between brain and heart, and they have a really great way of translating data into very strong emotional connection, which at the end of the day, that's what we all want. I think Microsoft is doing it very well as well. I think Amazon, for the most part, is doing it well as well.
Interesting, you're naming all tech companies versus CPGs too.
But
Yeah.
you know, there was a time when I grew up in this craft where you took like the best brands in the world, and they were, with the exception of Apple, most were on the CPG world. Now that is being transformed to tech and to fintech. Mm-hmm. So we gotta, and that's honestly, that's one of the things that I am making a point within the industry. Adweek, all the awards and all that, we need significantly better representation of non-CPG people in all these forums, because the model is being built there. And if we're not careful, we're gonna mess it up. But those are the brands that I looked at and I study and I like. And by the way, I use. So it's by the way, LinkedIn is one of my favorite brands.
Great brand.
Hi, over here. Hi, my name's Lauren. I'm from Ogilvy. Thanks for being here. My question is going back to what you were saying about how CMOs now need to know the language of the CFO and the CEO. Could you give some examples of what that language is? And I'm sure it depends, CPG or not, publicly traded or not, but just curious, when you say the language of those other officers, what do you mean?
You need to start with numbers. You need to show fluency of the P&Ls and the levers of the P&L, and you have to be able to articulate in what way the stuff that you're doing as a marketer will have an impact in those levers. In other words, you have to start with numbers. And by the way that the non-CPG world is, if you convince people with numbers, you don't need to show the work. If you start with the work, people will roll their eyes on you. When it comes to planners, you guys have beautiful, poetic, flowery language that I personally love. I've sometimes brought planners in front of engineers, and the engineers will roll their eyes. They're like, whoa, what? In what way is that going to move my product forward? That's what I mean with language. And in fact, some of the planners that I had at Meta that came from the advertising world, that's the first lesson that they learned very quickly. That you have to start with the business, and then will you way back to the poetry, otherwise people will roll their eyes. And there's a fundamental difference that maybe you guys are not getting, which is, in your work at the agency, you're very close to the revenue line. You sell creative product, you guide the creative product, you are at the center of the revenue line. When you're talking to a client that is working in the non-CPG world, you are 5, 6 steps removed from the revenue line. And that's a big, 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 big difference. So this whole notion that everybody needs to listen to me because I am the smartest person in the room, which most of the case you really are. Within the context of the advertising world, great, you're there. You do your work well, the agency is going to have both top and bottom line. When you're coming in to the client side in non-CPG, you're like 5 steps away. And if you start with the same language that you're using within the agency or within the CPG world, you're going to lose people. That's the biggest difference. Does that make sense?
Antonio, Greg Walker with the 4As. Question for you. You opened up your talk regarding the pressure that CMOs are under. And the tendency under pressure is to be conservative. And we've been speaking throughout this conference on the importance of strategic bravery. Can you address the challenge of presenting daring ideas to clients who are conservative due to the pressure that they're under? How can you get brave breakthrough ideas through in a conservative mindset environment on the client side?
The thing that normally happens is that when you guys are talking about breakthrough idea, normally is advertising related. The mindset of the client is total business related. I can assure you that if you're coming in with breakthrough ideas that are actually impacting product distribution, design, experience within the context of e-commerce, and by the way, those ideas could be very quickly tested, you're going to have a significantly higher opportunity to actually break through. The problem normally is with, okay, we have a business issue, we have a pricing issue, or we have a value exchange issue, or we have a distribution issue. Oh, here comes the agency with this amazing idea for a campaign. That's when it gets, and it's breakthrough, and it's bold, but that's when it gets a bit dangerous, because they're thinking the totality of the effort that they're going to have to do and the relative cost value impact relative to risk, like you said. So having a more holistic business mentality will help you actually sell more ideas across the totality of the business. And by the way, once you're able to do that, the tolerance for risk is going to be higher on the other side. These people understand my business, therefore they're not selling me a new campaign, they're actually helping me build my business. And normally that tends to work.
We have a couple more. Here's one from the web. What led you to start the kind of company you run now, focused on transformation and diversity and inclusion?
You know, I was in this business for 40 years. And I always, the three dimensions of my triangle were marketing transformation, leadership transformation, and then during the last 13, 15 years of my career, diversity and inclusion. So what I was seeing was particularly some of the topics that we've been talking about today, that there is a need to teach some of this stuff. And that's what I focused on. There are four key components of the model that we teach. So I do it jointly with Aspen, with the Aspen Institute and Yale School of Management. Is capability, which is not functional, is actually leadership capability. When I grew up in this business, that was taught within the companies. And I was privileged enough to grow in rich training companies like Procter & Gamble and PepsiCo. Not a lot of companies have that anymore. Procter still does. Most of the others don't. So leadership needs to be taught. The second element is community outside of your company. CMOs, and that's again, you guys can help a lot on that. CMOs can lack perspective and can lack best practices, and that can actually lead to very serious isolation. I was able to discover community outside of my companies in the last phase of my career through D&I. I was talking to my partners in crime, exchanging, and that evolved into true friendships. So the whole notion of the creation of communities outside of your company, very important. Mentoring as opposed to sponsorship, you need them both. But sponsor is the person inside the company that is going to pull you. It's going to give you stretch assignments, which means that your potential is higher than your capabilities. In other words, you're not ready. So it doesn't make sense to call a stretch assignment for some diversity place and for other leadership development, because both are stretch assignments. You are not ready for it. And mentorship is someone from outside the company that has only your best interest in mind to ensure that you have the right balance between what your company is telling you and what you can live. So that's the model that I built. And right now, because my focus initially was on diversity and inclusion, 75% of the participants are women and 60% are people of color, but this is not a diversity program. This is a leadership development program with best-in-class capability.
That's fantastic. Thank you all so much. We really appreciate it.